Queen Rania Abdullah, honored leaders from government, business, and civil society, welcome to our plenary session directly linked to the theme of this year's regional summit. And without doubt, the most pressing economic issue of our time in the Middle East and North Africa, and that is the ability to create jobs for the next generation. 10 years ago, the Arab Development Report raised many eyebrows, as we all know, putting in black and white the urgency in which the youth bulge should be dealt with today. Youth unemployment in general at that time was at 30%. We have seen action and even improvement, if we can be candid today, but it remains stubbornly high at 25%. And we'll find out through our panel this morning that some question those figures that have been put out. But these are real updated numbers from the International Labor Organization put out on October 19th, and I'd encourage you to go back and take a look of the global employment trends. But if we can use the analogy of a treadmill here, it seems that we're running at 5 to 6 kilometers an hour and have our iPod on and think that we're cruising along doing all the right things with public-private partnerships and restructuring education programs and training skills to create jobs. But then a crisis hits, and then we find that we're falling horribly behind pace. The 2008 crisis leading right into the Arab Spring, and all of a sudden what could be a potential opportunity for renewal with a young workforce becomes a huge challenge that requires a call to action at a much higher level than we've ever seen before. Now, we are aware of the challenge and the opportunity of a young workforce in this part of the world, but let's have some context before we think it's just a Middle East and North African problem, of course. You cross through the Mediterranean and you will find youth unemployment staggeringly high, and these are old numbers, 32% in Greece, this is pre-crisis, 28% in Italy, 22% in Portugal, and a staggering 41%, if not higher, in Spain. You think of the former Celtic Tiger of Ireland, youth unemployment of 27.5%. So we are in the throes of historic change coming from the grassroots. That's very, very clear over the last year, which requires more urgent solutions than ever before. So in that context, let me welcome Her Majesty Queen Rania Al Abdullah. She is someone, as those who attended the Middle East North Africa Regional Forum, who spends her entire energies on dealing with the support of education, training, sustainable development, and partnerships in the public-private sector spirit for action for the next generation. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, John. This morning, I want us to start thinking about breaking some laws. Now, I don't mean the laws of our governments or the laws of linguistics or economics. I mean we need to start breaking the laws of physics. Let me explain. We all know that in the Arab world, a quarter of our young people are unemployed, the highest rate in the world. For women, the statistics are even higher. The cost to the region is up to $50 billion a year. Worse, it cripples communities, hinders development, and frustrates an entire generation. For 10 years, the unemployment rate has stagnated at these intolerable levels. If we're going to give our people the peace and prosperity they deserve, we're going to have to start doing things differently. Start challenging the norm. Start breaking some laws. And it's the laws of physics that we need to overcome, because all too often we seem over-endowed with them here in the Arab world. Just look at the first law of thermodynamics. It tells us that energy and matter cannot be created or destroyed. In other words, you can't make something out of nothing. But that is exactly what we need to do. Too many of our young people believe they cannot pull themselves up by their bootstraps, that the best future for them lies in a safe, secure government job. We have to re-engineer the expectations of our children, instill in them the belief that there are no limits to their aspirations. That will take a quality education. It will take inspiring teachers and modern curricula that teaches them the skills of an entrepreneur, critical thinking, teamwork, problem solving, initiative, communication, and leadership. Because the skills of an entrepreneur are the skills of a 21st century worker. And the private sector can help. They can get our youth out of classrooms into internships, apprenticeships, training, and summer jobs to learn the principles of an enterprise culture, that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. Then they can start their own businesses. And when we create one entrepreneur, they create 3 or 4 new jobs, sparking a chain reaction that seemingly does the impossible, create something out of nothing. The next law to break is Newton's first law of motion. It states that the velocity of an object remains the same when no external force acts upon it, that without outside help, nothing will change. Around the world, people too often think that the Arab region cannot alter its destination without outside help, that without an external force, we will forever have unemployment and poverty. I fundamentally disagree. I believe that in every child lies the aspirations of a nation. Partnering with academia, NGOs, and the private sector, we can not only help our children transition from school to work, but reposition our region as a hub of creativity and innovation. Because we have within our people all the potential and power to change our fate, to improve the lives of our loved ones. We can break this law if we support startups, clear burdensome regulations and red tape, and unleash the innovation of small businesses as dynamos of employment. Do not underestimate the entrepreneurial spirit of our young people. In a recent Gallup poll, 15% of young Arabs said they wanted to start a business in the next 12 months, compared to just 4% of Americans and Europeans. We just have to set them in motion. To do that, we'll need to disprove the next law, Hubble's law, which says that the further out an object is in the universe, the faster it's moving away from the Earth. That those out in front make the most rapid progress. It sometimes seems the Arab world has fallen too far behind that we'll never catch up. But we can. I know because others already have. South Korea and Singapore accomplished this feat in the Far East, going from developing to developed nations in a single generation. We can do the same here in the Middle East, but we have to start pulling in more investments. We have to channel funds to where we need them most, schools, startups, and soft skills training. To raise new financing, we have to think afresh. We have to leverage the private sector, tap sovereign wealth funds, widen the net of donors, and uncork the $700 billion currently controlled by women in the Middle East. We have to be more effective with our resources by better coordinating NGOs and paying for what we get out of schools, not just what we put in, for results, not promises. A quality education, an economy based on the private sector, a culture of entrepreneurship and work experience, a secure stream of innovative funding. These are just some of the reforms we need to bring down unemployment and raise up our young people. At the Dead Sea World Economic Forum, across Jordan and all over the Arab region, I've seen and heard from young people. And so many of them have inspiring ideas and tremendous potential. Like Yusuf Wadi, Hani Abu Huwaj, Munir Abu Hilal, and Mohammed Al-Azam, who earned a medal-winning position at Microsoft's Imagine Cup, the first time an Arab country reaches the finals. Or like the ESCO team from Nablus, Palestine, who just 3 days ago won Best Company of the Year at the Injaz Young Arab Entrepreneurs Competition. Thankfully, support for these young people is springing up across the region. Initiatives like Silatak, Amman Tech Tuesdays, and the Middle East Leadership Academy are connecting young people with employers, experts, and each other. Networks of investors, incubators, and mentors are helping to fill the skills and financing gaps. Groups like Oasis 500 in Jordan, Seed Startup in Dubai, and Plug and Play in Egypt are providing not just funds, but much needed advice and training. But we can do more. we can all do more to encourage young people to take risks, to teach our children to see and foresee the next big opportunity, to nurture the next generation to break assumptions and confound expectations. Everyone here in this room has imagination and determination. Your idea, your initiative could be all the difference to a young woman starting a business or a young man trying to find a job. So let's start brainstorming. Let's start asking ourselves, how can I help put our young people not just on a path to work, but on a career path to prosperity? How can I inspire a new class of entrepreneurs? How can I help my country break the laws of physics? Thank you all very much.
Your Majesty, thanks very much. And I understand I'll keep a watchful eye so you can contribute throughout the 45 minutes that we have together. Just for format purposes, we have about 45 minutes. And in that last 15 minutes, I want to open up questions to the floor so we can have as much dialogue as possible. We had a conversation, as we normally do in the green room behind, to share a cup of tea or an espresso. And I said I want to move from 35,000 feet right down to the ground to see how practical we can be in our time together, because this is a topic that's been discussed for a long, long time, going back to the development report I referred to in my opening comments. And as Her Majesty talked about in her opening comments, we know the practical solutions and the toolbox that we have available, but the game has changed in the last year. So what I'd like to do very quickly is go right across the panel here and have you give a self-introduction, but I want to find the most practical means to go forward to deal what is the most urgent issue in the region. In our program, Marketplace Middle East, we've been going out to the different states and countries and looking at the expectations. The expectations are up here. And if we don't deliver some light at the end of the tunnel in a very short period of time, people will get extremely frustrated. We've seen the example already in Iraq, and we see the frustration at the boiling point in Egypt. So, Soraya Salti, I'd like to talk with you first on the work that you've done, which was signaled by Her Majesty. Describe what you're doing, but how do we take it to the next phase of job creation?
Well, first of all, we had 100 students coming in from 12 Arab countries competing for the best student company of the year, and those are 17-year-olds from public schools across the region. The most exciting thing is those were all trained by private sector volunteers that were in their classrooms that took them through a semester of building a viable entrepreneurial venture with profits, funds that they had to raise, ideas that they had to come up with, and then finally coming to compete for the best student company. Her Majesty was there with us. The students were euphoric. The energy was unbelievable. In fact, one of our board members was a judge, and he's here at the World Economic Forum. And you say men don't cry. Well, he came up to me and said, I just want to say one thing. Thank you so much for the opportunity that you gave me. And all I gave him was an opportunity of 48 hours to judge the best student company. And immediately tears started falling from his eyes. Because when you see the hope, when you change your life, there's nothing like it. You gain something, you feel so good, and you know that you can influence the next life. And I think this generation of Arab youth are so inspired, and they're so capable. They've done the impossible politically. We need to empower them to do the impossible economically. 80% are connected online. They know what they want. They know what they can service each other with the goods and services that they need. If we can only empower them with the entrepreneurial skills to do it and to create a little ecosystem around them, not very much. I mean, Oasis 500, yesterday we were hearing from him, an investment of $300,000 reaped $6 million in startup seed angel investment that went into it. If we could have an entrepreneurship club on every campus, a boot camp, an incubator, and invite the private sector to immediately go in and have a role to play. The private sector are ready and willing. They have tears in their eyes. Just give them the channel to actually make a difference.
Okay. Quick follow-up to you.
Yeah.
Is there still an over-dependence on the state? There's usually this concept that first port of call for a job is to go into government because it's in a sense a job for life. Have we broken that mold in this upcoming generation?
Immediately and instantly, we have to create the right signals for Arab youth to empower them to make the correct decisions. Today, Arab youth, if you look at the statistics, 50 to 70% want government employment still, because that's the tradition. How do you change that momentum that Her Majesty is talking about, that motion? How do you reverse it? You've got to tell them, listen, government jobs are not there. I heard you this morning on CNN, and you're saying, let's wait for the institutions to be built. Let's wait. We've got to wait. Wait for what? The youth are saying...
Just want to clarify, those were not my words.
Yes,
but.
no, not your words. The panelists.
Oh, yeah, no, I was going to say.
But the youth are saying, we don't want your education. It's irrelevant. You know that song, we don't want no education. It's irrelevant right now. It's about education for employment. And what does that mean? It means entrepreneurship education. It means quick, rapid courses that are industry specific. It means private sector coming to the table, sector by sector, and saying, here are the skills that we need right now for those jobs that are available right now. And investment funds that come and spur social enterprises like ourselves, other training organizations, private sector that can immediately, now, today, come to the table, train those youth in 3-4 months and send them into the jobs that currently exist and empower the rest to become entrepreneurs.
Okay. Habib, you describe yourself perhaps as a serial entrepreneur. I mean, you like doing job startups. What is the mindset and practical terms now in terms of a sense of urgency to deal with the challenge at hand?
Right, and I think I agree with Suraya. I think how we can take what Suraya is doing and the initiatives she talked about and scale those up. So it requires the private sector, the public sector, the media, the NGOs to all come together to try to think about policies, try to think about programs, try to think about human and intellectual capital. But actually that doesn't mean it should be a top-down approach. In fact, most ecosystems emerge in a bottom-up approach. So how can we actually attack all of the elements of the ecosystem together to accelerate this? And in the Arab world, we're experts at importing the best universities, importing the best experts in the world, coming together and coming up with master plans, how we're going to do step by step and push the entrepreneurship in the world. And that's BS because that doesn't work. Seriously, I mean, from the entrepreneurship world, what we do is we iterate. We start a company, we look at the feedback, we listen to our user, we listen to our people, and we iterate, and we're agile. And this is what government should do, this is what private sector should do. So this is what a mindset should be on all levels. Private sector can play a big role. They can create ecosystem around them. They should not always be in control of their core competency. They should be able to outsource some of their competency to others and work together. Perhaps the public sector also can think about that. When I look at startups in general, I really looked at the cycle of startups similar to what we have now in the Arab world and Arab Spring. First, we have something called uninformed optimism. You think you don't know what you're going to, you're a bit naive, you think you're going to rule the world. You go. You reach the top and then you see what the problem is and you say, oops, and you go down. And this is actually informed pessimism. And then you have two crossroads. Either you crash and burn and return again and you do it again because in startups we're agile and we iterate, or you fix and you go up and it's called informed optimism. So in all of this cycle, it's not about the map that we're going to draw. In fact, one of my good friends, Joey Ito, says, it's not about the map, it's about the compass. If you have a good compass and you know how to navigate, it's much better than actually sit down and write the map. Because guess what? Doing the map is much more expensive, it's much more money and time than actually doing it. So the entrepreneurship mindset, we need to push on it on all levels. So we really need to think about 4 enablers. The personal enablers, and that's focusing on the individual, mentorship programs, education, and Suraya is at the heart of it. The second one is financial enablers, and that goes from micro VC to private equity, and I think the role of government here is important. I mean, I run a Wamda, a platform that invests in entrepreneurs, both intellectual and human capital, and we actually have partnered with OS 500 to even take their startups when they graduate. So we have this collaboration. But what's lacking is that the government here, particularly the government in the Gulf, right? They're super wealthy. 65% of the oil reserves in the world, 27% only production, so there's a lot of wealth. Monetary perspective, we're set. How can we use this money to actually spur innovation and spur entrepreneurship? And the government should not play the role of investors themselves. And we've seen it happen. And this is a failure. You know, it's different incentives. They come with policies. They come with conditions that dampen the entrepreneurship spirit. So this is the two is financial enablers, how we can think about that. The third one is business enablers, and that's incubators, networks, similar to ACES 500 and others. And those are really good. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's a hyper-local. So we won't see countries compete. We will see cities compete. So really, ecosystems are very hyper-local. They're about walking around the cafe, finding your next founder or your next investor. In fact, I was based in Boston, and one of the highest densities in the world of startups is one building in Cambridge called Cambridge Innovation Center. And that was really something where you just go in and multiple startups actually emerge every day. It's kind of a self-feeding cycle, the self-breeding cycle. And the fourth one is environment enablers. And here I cannot stress more the role of the press and the media. You open today the media and the press, and you see bad news, you see blood, you see something that's doom and gloom. And if you see something funny or something fresh, we see like entertainment, all the new pop singers in the Arab world. I think we should see more of our own youth, our innovation. Yesterday, His Majesty quoted Steve Jobs. I would like him next year to quote one of our entrepreneurs. Why can't we have that as a role model? So we need to stress on that. And also the role of government, removing the red tapes. One of the entrepreneurs wanted to invest in, just quit his job in Dubai. And as soon as he quit his job, his bank cut down his credit cards. So of all this credit card myth in the Silicon Valley, I'm going to live on my debts and all of that. That doesn't work here. That not to talk about the bankruptcy laws, you go to jail and all of that. So we really need to fix those. But to just one last point, it's really about attacking all the elements together. It's not about doing one thing. If you've seen the movie Braveheart, everyone attacks at the same time and then they win. If one just attacked, probably would have not reached the same conclusion. We need to do the same thing.
Okay, thanks very much, Habib. Sharan, see if you can provide, as I was suggesting in my opening remarks, this is not a MENA problem. It's just most acute in the Middle East and North Africa. And is there not a glass ceiling, but a cement ceiling to the youth now? I quoted some numbers, and you were challenging those numbers before we came out, rightfully, suggesting that it's even more acute if you take into account those who have given up looking in the graduates as well. So we've done all these programs to train people, have them go to university and trying to come into the workforce, and then they just throw in the towel. Is that what we're seeing?
Absolutely. This is now a crisis of unemployment globally. There is no country that doesn't have a youth unemployment crisis. Every country has a level of youth unemployment that's not sustainable, that is in fact a risk to business. Of course you have particular depths of this problem here, but don't feel alone. You heard from Spain, but go right throughout Europe. Spain, France, Bulgaria, Hungary, pick a country. And then go to countries that look like magical economies. Ireland, Australia has one of the biggest problems right now, and they just smashed their youth wage for young people because the court declared that social dialogue with corporations to set a living wage was unconstitutional. I mean, we have some real issues on behalf of workers. You may have realised that I am the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation. I speak for workers globally, and we take care and responsibility for the unemployed. So I'm going to give you two bites of the cherry. One is we need immediacy. It wasn't until yesterday in a private session that I heard the voice of urgency. We must act now, not tomorrow. Of course there's medium-term scale and there's long-term sustainability, but we must act now. So immediacy and scale. I'm really interested in supporting the entrepreneurial piece here, but let me tell you, we need millions, not tens of thousands, and we need them today. So here's a challenge on two fronts. One, to the private sector. You can help. The Youth Agenda Council of the WEF and the Employment and Social Protection Council of the WEF actually have a challenge for you. It's supported by the emerging multinationals, so we want to see it supported by all multinationals. And that is, take 10 apprentices now, today, tomorrow, or interns. 2 years, 6 months training, 2 years nurturing. It would actually result in million or more jobs, not simply tens of thousands. And it's doable. We've seen it done in my country, in Australia. We employed our young people a decade ago by putting in place a youth pack. You're either in education or you're in work, or you're in both. But you can't be out of work or out of education. We've got to do that globally. And that's the message we'll be taking to the G20 next week, where they've already agreed with global business and global labour that in fact they will have an employment task force between now and Mexico, the next G20. The second piece of the puzzle is again agreement between us, labour, and business globally, and that's the informal sector. If you want to do something about SMEs, if you want to do something about innovative young people, and women in particular, let's formalise what again is a problem in every country, but a dominant problem here. Up to 50%, 80% in some African countries of your economies are informal. And if we could fix the regulation, the property rights, the credit capacity on the business side, and if we could put in place freedom of association, a minimum wage on which you can live in the labour side, we've got a package that global labour and global business agree with. We've got to make it happen. On the medium term, I was heartened yesterday to hear the debate both in a private session and the public session about regional integration. Projects on a grand scale, infrastructure, sustainable energy, food security. These are the things that must be put in place. And can I finish by saying this is not a competition between sectors. I've heard a lot of terrific advocates for SMEs, and I've heard other people saying SMEs are not going to make the difference. I've heard people saying it's about entrepreneurship, it's not about people getting a secure job. And I've heard a lot of talk about the role of the government. You need all of the players. You need all of the players. You can't do mega infrastructure without government and the private sector. You can't actually free workers in the Gulf states to earn a decent wage, to not be an enslavement without labour and private sector and government talking to each other. We've got a lot of work to do, and I pose that social dialogue, governments taking responsibility, the private sector taking responsibility, and labour and civil society taking responsibility at the table, designing the plans that work in your communities, but also demanding worldwide support is the answer. And finally, for those emerging multinationals who can't afford the 10 interns, then why don't we drive ODA into wage subsidies, into incentives, so they're training the next generation that they're going to need as they grow to employ. We can do it.
Okay, thanks very much, Sharan. Khalid Akudera, I'd like to follow up with you from KPMG. You're one of the global shapers, which we're going to learn more about in the session that's going to follow with Professor Schwab immediately after ours. Analyze what you've heard so far in terms of delivering results quickly.
I think we have no excuse anymore. If the governments are not going to help us, if the large corporations are not going to come together and help create new jobs, it's up to us as individuals to make an initiative. I am a full-time KPMG employee. However, I created a website dedicated to women empowerment and creating jobs for women in different sectors. And by this, throughout my spare time, I would go off to different industries, meet with individuals, and create jobs for women in these sectors. And what we found is that they were very accepting of these things. Everyone is open to women employment. Everyone wants to hire. It's just a matter of bridging the gap between education and the labor force. So I think there's a huge problem in our Arab society where the cultural mindset is that I will grow up, my family will take care of me, my dad's gonna buy me my car when I graduate, and he's gonna find me my job. And there's no pure HR. I've yet to see a good HR department in our countries. Everything is based on, do you know someone that could be hired in this field? We need to really bridge the gap between the education and the labor force, and this is done by things such as psychometric tests. We can learn from our friends in the West on psychometric tests. Our ladies and our men, they go into the workforce or to universities, based on either peer pressure or dreams. They expect to be astronauts, they expect to be scientists, and they do not know their capabilities. These small tests during their high school period educates them and tells them this is the field that you should be getting into. And it saves them an average of 2 to 3 years from changing majors and a waste of time. So that is one area. Another area is that I think that working part-time, there's so much technologies out there right now. There's so much innovations. There's so much new tools out there. There's women, one of the percentages that's as high as the women unemployment rate. I mean, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia right now, we have 1 million females that have applied for the social benefit program, which is Hafiz program. And this shapes up a huge percentage of the unemployed market. And the innovations are out there. Why not open up the social media channel? Why not let them work from home? Open up customer service centers and put it into their home. Take the training to their places. If there's no transportation, we can innovate and use technology and bring it to them. It's a matter of cultural mindset. We have to change ourselves. We cannot keep relying on our families and folks. I mean, I myself personally have had my lemonade stand. I've painted my wall. I've mowed my lawn. And I really hope that the Arab world changes to that kind of mindset and culture.
Okay, thanks very much, Khalid. Nemat Shafiq, before I came over, you know how the World Economic Forum is very intriguing in what you learn in the sessions here and what you learn having a conversation on the transfer bus or having a coffee. And one businessman said, you know, what are your thoughts about the region right now? And I expressed my concerns about the sense of urgency that we need. He said, I think we're heading for an iceberg in 3 to 5 years, and we're not acknowledging it in the room because we're going to try to skirt around the iceberg because the crisis is so deep and the unemployment challenge is so great, and the European Union and the United States has so much debt that it can't be an incubator for this part of the world or to come in and do the sort of joint ventures that are needed for job creation. Is that the reality that we're faced with today, that this is much deeper than we're acknowledging and we should be candid with the youth of what lies ahead?
Well, there is an iceberg, but actually we can navigate around it, I think is my view. Let me start with a story, if I may, and then make 3 points. We recently had an event with youth leaders at the IMF, and I met this young Tunisian woman who's actually in the Guinness Book of World Records as the youngest ever published author. She wrote her first book at the age of 7. And she was incredibly angry. She was angry because she said, you adults, I guess now I'm an adult, I'm an older person, you struck a deal with us, which is you told us we would get an education and then we would get a job. And the more education we got, the better the job we would get. The paradox in the region, of course, is it's the opposite. The more education you get, the less likely you are to be employed. And you've cheated us. And the atmosphere in the room, not just from this young Tunisian woman, but from most of these youth leaders from around the world was, move over, old folks, it's our turn now. And that reflected a sort of fixed pie mentality. You guys are sitting in jobs that we want, mainly public sector jobs, scoot over and give them to us. And I think the key for the region in order to navigate this iceberg is to get away from that sort of fixed pie mentality and move toward more of a growth mentality. And I think there are 3 key things for that to happen. First is the business environment, and we've all heard and we all know what the issues are on the business environment, which is creating the environment for just these sort of entrepreneurial initiatives to grow. It's important to remember that this revolution started as a protest against the business environment. That young Tunisian man who set himself alight was protesting because he was so fed up of being harassed in the local market where he was not being allowed to sell his goods. So in many ways, the horrible business environment in the region, particularly for small business, was the genesis of this revolutionary movement. So the business environment is first. Second is educational quality. There's a paradox in the Middle East and North Africa, which is that we actually invest a lot in education. The public sector in this region invests more as a share of GDP in education than almost any other region in the world. And if you add the amount of private investment through parents investing in private tutorials because the public system is failing them and so on, it actually has the highest rate of educational investment in the world. But the quality of that education is very poor. I think Quidrania and many others have pointed out it's not preparing young people for the labor market of the future. And my third point is a fiscal one. Many of you will know that some people say the IMF actually stands for the expression, it's mostly fiscal, since most problems for us boil down to a fiscal problem. But I have to make a fiscal point. But the fiscal point is this, that unless countries in the region find a way to create the fiscal space to make the kind of public sector investments, particularly in infrastructure, that are needed, we won't be able to navigate around the iceberg. We know that every $1 billion you invest in infrastructure will create at least 40,000 jobs, and of course lays the foundation for the private sector to invest in companies and other things. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at what most countries in the region have done in response to the social pressures and the revolutionary movements, is what they've done is they've raised wages of existing public sector workers. The people who already have jobs and who are already probably overpaid, and providing even greater incentives for those young people to wait in the queue for a public sector job. And what they did in doing that is they've closed the fiscal space and lost the opportunity to invest in infrastructure, which will create jobs but also help create a better business environment for entrepreneurship. So I have to make my fiscal plug.
Okay, good. I've been covering business news for 25 years. Never heard that description from the IMF, so I had to tune in. I've heard some more nasty ones, of course, during the Asia crisis, but...
We've learned.
Yeah, I was going to say, austerity. I don't think the Greeks would be too happy about all this right now. I want to follow up with you, if I may, Nemeth, about some of the things we're seeing in some of the countries in the region. I'm getting increasingly alarmed at some of the rollbacks, as we've been talking about for the last 5-6 years. The share of global FDI to the region has gone from 1%, as you know, to 5%. So it's a phenomenal jump because it was an attractive place to invest. So in markets like Egypt with 80 million consumers, or even a smaller market like here in Jordan, people could see opportunities. There's a real danger from what we see right now, that the rolling back privatization, the rolling back incentives for banks to come in and do startups. They're taking those away. They're increasing subsidies, which is making the fiscal situation even worse. Aren't we rolling back the gains that were made in the last 5-6 years as a knee-jerk reaction to the street?
I think any investor will tell you what scares them most is uncertainty. And we are in a period of uncertainty. I think that's normal. So I would not be surprised if we did see some rolling back of private investment in the short term. Having said that, some people will tell you, I did my PhD thesis many years ago on what determines private investment in the region. And I interviewed at the time, many, many years ago, about 100 entrepreneurs. And many of them said to me, in fact, most of them said to me, I made the most money in the period immediately after Nasser took over in Egypt and there was socialism. And that's where I made my biggest money. So in many ways, the smart money comes in when things are cheap, when there's a lot of uncertainty, when there's not a lot of competition. So I would not be surprised if there's actually a little bit of smart money coming in and moving in early and taking advantage of this period of uncertainty. But I think the aggregate numbers will, not surprisingly, probably fall in the short term.
But my question is a little bit different. I'm saying that the policies are going backwards. I think there's an idea that we need to answer to that call that was on the street in the last year. And cancellation of privatization is not a job creator.
Actually, to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of evidence of policies reverting. And there aren't a lot of outstanding privatization. Much of that agenda has already been done. So I haven't seen any rolling back of policies, but what I've seen is a rolling back of investments as investors pause and wait to see what happens.
Okay, very good. I'm going to go to the floor for questions, if we can have some hands up here. We have the microphones right up front. We have some hands here. Majid Jaffer first. If we can really hustle to get the microphones up, because we have a limited period of time. To the gentleman here in the front row, and then we'll have a microphone there. If we can get excuse me, can we get a second microphone to the gentleman right there, please?
Thanks, John. I want to echo on Sharon's point about immediacy. And there's a reason that the sign above you says special meeting in 2011. This year is unlike any year the region has seen. And the biggest threats from the Arab Spring is basic societal instability. We've got a liquidity crisis, and we've got an immediate job crisis. It's not a long-term priority. In Egypt, you've got 2 million unemployed laborers coming into Cairo every morning for jobs that just aren't there anymore. The Egyptian government will be out of dollars by April. I mean, that's the biggest example, but it's the same across. And entrepreneurship, all good ideas, long-term reform, but unless we get an injection of capital immediately into these economies on major infrastructure projects that were mentioned to create jobs, we're going to face a huge problem. And the only source I can see is from the GCC. The rise in oil prices caused by these revolutions will inject $250 to $300 billion additional funds into GCC coffers this year. If we can create some sort of Marshall Plan, Arab equivalent of the EBRD, and channel that into these post-revolution economies, we might have a chance of saving things, but the immediacy is more stark than ever.
Thanks for that. It was one of the questions I wanted to pose. We've talked about a single market as a result of the Greater Arab Free Trade Association, like the GAFTA. A lot of the barriers have not been knocked down. Majid makes a very interesting point about it's the GCC that's going to need to fund this operation. Jordan's an applicant to the GCC, as so is Morocco. One would argue that it should be a broader-based activity. IMF money and World Bank money was turned down in Egypt. There's got a big rethink now. Question.
There is other money. There is other money.
Sorry, go ahead. Just pull the microphone up, Sharon, too.
There is other money. I mean, I agree that there's going to be a self-reliance primarily, but an immediacy. If Egypt's in trouble, even if it's about dissatisfaction of youth and people are back on the streets, or worse, it's about a huge crisis because of the lack of money, then the world's in deep trouble. So people are looking to Europe, but if they don't look to this region, they're equally crazy on the global economic front. And that's the message that bigger folk at the G20 have to hear. But let me just give you one example of other money. We've done the calculations. There are thousands of European companies in your region. Thousands. They can help. They can actually help with employment today if we get the settings right by, sitting at the table, looking at the incentives very quickly. The Bill Gates report that will be released for the G20 asks sovereign wealth funds to put up a percentage for infrastructure. It should be coming into this region, provided in our view it's about sustainability, and it's now, both local and indeed the mega projects that we heard in terms of regional integration. There is no doubt that my view is the money is there. There's huge capital. Workers themselves, we sit on $25 trillion. Now we're looking at saying we want our workers' capital, our pension funds, to go to X. And we want the World Bank and the IMF to think a little differently about how you actually secure that capital, what's the incentive to drive it into those big infrastructure projects. The other thing is you've got local governments, and some of that money ought to be going to what is the immediate thing you need to do in a local area, because that'll drive jobs in construction, services, in support. And can I just make a plea while I've got the mic? Let's not forget that some jobs are very good jobs in the public sector. If you don't have a health system, if you don't have nurses, if you don't have teachers, if you don't have people prepared to care for our folk, and childcare, the care sector's an enormous potential if we're going to unleash the productivity of women, and there are jobs in those, jobs and jobs. So I want to see an end to this kind of pitting sectors against each other. You really have to work together. We all have to work together.
Okay. We had a microphone here. I just ask you to be very direct, please.
Yeah.
Whether it's a comment or question.
Yeah. So we always say that these are the jobs available, and these are the skills needed. And then we go ahead and make these courses and like kind of make a factory of leaders or a factory of the modern worker. Well, that's very industrial, you know. We're still thinking in the industrial age while we're in a completely different age now. A completely different approach is needed. And if you look at businesses, they succeed because they ask the customer what they need. So it's about time we consult the customer and we make them part of the solution. So how do we create a real dialogue that is very genuine, where we consult the customer, which is the youth or the children, about their education, their curriculums, all that sorts of stuff, that we make them part of the solution so that they start defining for themselves what jobs they want and what skills they want to gain, rather than we assuming that, well, these are the jobs available, we train you on it, you do it. There's a completely different approach where you start asking the person what you want to do, how do you mobilize things to get doing it, and then you'll find completely new jobs that never existed before, like outsourcing and all that thing. These things came out when people were asked, what do you want to do? So how do you create this genuine dialogue that is not fake or...
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the interjection. If you hand the microphone to the gentleman to your left, that'd be great. Habib, you want to comment on this? I think it's an interesting point.
No, I think it's a great question, and I don't think you should ask what they want. You should listen to what they want. I mean, to bring it back again to startup mentality, if Henry Ford wanted to ask the people what they wanted, he would have come up with a faster horse, not with a car. But to go back to your point is look at what's working and amplify that. That's the best thing, is bottom-up approach, look at what's working, amplify that. In Wamda, we're doing our own little experiment of a small ecosystem. We're doing a TV show, an online press, we're doing investing, we're doing mentorship, all of that, and experimenting with that. There's Injaz, there's OS 500. Take those examples and amplify those. I think this is probably the best way. Outsourcing is happening. Find it and amplify it. So maybe more listening than asking.
Okay, we had a microphone here with the gentleman. I'm just going to hop off because if I can get another microphone.
Mohammed Abu Shakar from Egypt. I'm a global shaper. Well, I want to make an anti-physical point for Sharan. Well, I know that sometimes the advice that the countries get is always about macroeconomics. And sometimes I feel that macroeconomics is, in a way, anti-youth policy, because youth are no more considered as macroeconomics. For instance, I used to say if there is if Google was an Egyptian invention, it wouldn't have been registered because the guy in the registry office would never recognize it or would never understand it. So when these international financial institutions deal with the government or contact the government for surveillance or for advice or for assistance, does that kind of international institution just consider that the youth is a macroeconomic issue? Youth, demographically speaking, is a macroeconomic issue? Do we make this point? Thank you.
Shall I take that one? Well, I mean, I think, first of all, youth is a very macroeconomic issue, and the best example of that is debt. Because countries that accumulate debt today, you guys, you young people, are going to have to pay that back. So it's very important for young people to think about macroeconomic policy, because in many ways, you know, the amount of taxes, the burden they're going to bear for the rest of their lives is being determined by the decisions being taken by the current generation. So it is a very macroeconomic issue. I think, however, it's very fair to say that organizations like the IMF didn't pay enough attention to some of these well, we always paid a lot of attention to countries not getting over-indebted, but I don't think we paid enough attention in the past to the issues around jobs and equity. I think we've made a lot of progress in the last couple of years through partnership with trade unions, with the ILO, to try and get a better understanding of the macroeconomic drivers that create jobs and produce inequitable outcomes. And I think that was something we neglected, particularly in this region, but I think going forward we're very committed to doing better on.
But we still have a gap. We still have a big gap. Macroeconomics doesn't have to be constructed in the way it is, and your point's absolutely right. If you have job-centred macroeconomic policy, you have a different level of settings. So we've got an orthodoxy that's failed, but it's still alive and well in Europe, in the US, in Latin America and other places. I can take you to Brazil and Argentina, where they have the kind of economies Professor Schwab was talking about, where they have growth with social inclusion, where they're targeting industries, they're targeting poverty, and there's a pretty healthy dialogue going on. You go to Chile, where I was for the general strike, and its macroeconomic figures look fantastic. Growth running at, on the streets. It wasn't just workers and students. It was actually middle-class people, middle-income people telling me that they'd had enough. They had to take out a loan to send their kids to school or have a health treatment. You must change economics. We are in a dialogue, and it's a very robust debate between the IMF, the ILO and ourselves. We're working on pilots, but we still need to see one thing would help. You know, if the IMF and others got it wrong before the crisis, why not put employment and social protection, we'd add, as indicators in what they call the mutual assessment process, which is supposed to be the early warning bell. But will finance ministers accept that? No, so keep pushing. Young people have some of the answers that older people don't want to listen to.
Okay. We have time for 2 more questions. One interjection here, please.
Alessandro Magnoli Bocchi with China Investment Company. I was in Morocco, in Marrakesh, at the World Economic Forum last year. We did not see coming the Arab uprising. But if somebody had told me, look, there is going to be an Arab uprising in a few months, I would have been very surprised, right? But we did see and discuss some of the tensions, lower global environment, lower growth, lack of job creation, unemployment, etc. So, coming to this year, we cannot see what's going to happen next year, but we can see the tensions, right? And I would like to have your opinion on the tension I see, right? And the tension I see when I hear the minimum common denominator of what I hear at this WEF is that there is a very clear sense of urgency. We need to do it now, we need to do it fast. And at the same time, there is an incredible complexity in the answer. Everybody says the answer is very complex, it's very slow, it's going to take a long time, right? So urgency and complexity, how do you solve this tension that is clearly there? Thank you.
Okay, Soraya, can you jump on that? That's be good. Very quickly, if you can, please.
You have it right. It's a very complicated, and we've got 2 waves. One that has arrived, 125 million youth who are between the age of 15 and 29, and then another wave coming right behind them, those that are below the age of 15, and there's 135 million of those. So I think we've got to think of education as the core root cause of all this that's happened. That's what you said about that Tunisian young author is at the core of the issue, and empowering them with an education that works. And to really, we know that education for employment produces very quick results. We have examples, like you said, amplify the things that do work. Entrepreneurship education works. But then again, we have to also pay attention for the 135 million that are in schools, under the age of 15. And where is education reform? Why isn't it at the top of the agenda right now so that we don't get hit by the iceberg that John was talking about?
Okay, good. The final comment from the floor, please.
Raya Kalalda, the University of Jordan. The question is for Ms. Namat Shafiq. I was a bit confused and surprised to hear your comment that the Arab world has the highest rate of investment in education. I come from academia, and I stand corrected on this, but we can't feel this investment. Only yesterday we had a session about the huge problems that we have in education, and people teachers in public in public schools and in public education in universities have very low wages. So we in academia can feel this investment. So could you explain more? What shape or form does this investment have or take? Thank you.
I think the numbers I'm referring to are just how much the government is spending. I think what you're pointing out is that it's not spent very well. And that's the problem with educational reform in the region, is that much money is wasted on schools that are not used properly, paying teachers who don't show up, and so on and so forth. So there's huge amounts of waste in the educational system in the region, which if the system was reformed, had better incentives, had better performance in terms of linking what children learn to what the labor force, what they actually need to work and to be effective in the labor force, could have huge benefits. So in the education sector, it isn't an issue of more resources, it's using what's there better. And of course, more resources can be used well, but I guess my only point is that it's the future agenda is more about quality than quantity in education.
Thanks very much. I just want to invite Her Majesty Queen Rania to make a final comment, and then we'll wrap up the session, please.
Thank you, John, and thanks to all the panelists for the very interesting interventions. And I found that extremely informative. I just wanted to close by saying that, one of the dangers that's resulting from the discourse and the debate that's happening in the Arab world, I'm feeling, is that in the Arab mentality there seems to be a very thick and bold dividing line between economic reform and political reform. And I think, what we need to do is realize that economic reform is political reform. And that because the danger is if we have that dividing line, that things like education, job creation, all these issues I'm seeing are not on they're falling down the priority list. So this is a very important thing that we have to realize. We cannot antagonize the private sector. We need to bring them into the debate because they are the main engines of job creation. We need to focus on issues like education and prioritize them in the budgets, etc. So economic reform really is political reform, and unless we deal with some of the issues that have affected the standards of living in the Arab world, then we're going to continue to see the social and political unrest. And what's very worrying is sometimes what people are asking for politically and the discourse that they're taking and the requests that they make are actually shooting themselves in the foot because they result in outcomes that actually reduce the standards of living and create even more political unrest. So let's remove that line and realize that really to make things better, we really have to look at the economic reform.
Your Majesty, thanks very much for the interjection. I just want to get a nice round of applause for the panelists for being brief and directly to the point. It's a superb mix of people on the panel. I would ask you to stay in your seats. There's a new initiative being launched at this juncture by the World Economic Forum called the Global Shapers to deal with the very things that Her Majesty just talked about. We have a 3-minute video, and then Professor Schwab and Mr. Bendy are going to take the stage to announce the new initiative, which is a 15-minute session. So I'd ask you to stay in your seats for that, and if we could roll the video. Thanks.
The Global Shapers community is already covering the globe.
Our age group is still a bit naive, but naive in a good way.
What we are doing here is not something which is new or innovative. What we are doing here is something very compulsory.
I think that there's something that's pretty unique about just the millennial mindset. We're incredibly collaborative and we're incredibly hopeful.
Naive in a way that we think that we can change it, and we can drastically change it.
We're idealists. I think that we all feel like we can create something incredible out of it.
Young people are a tremendous source of ideas, inspiration, and innovation. Tapping into this generation can help reconnect you with that idealism, which sometimes is hard to find on a day-to-day basis.
But at our age, we still think everything's possible and nothing's impossible, and collectively we can do something about it.
The landscape of the way that knowledge is transferred and the way that people are communicating has shifted radically in the last 3, 4, 5 years. And a lot of the power that was controlled by traditional media previously is now in the hands, honestly, of people in their 20s.
This is a generation that's already empowered. We just want to bring them together and help make them even more effective.
And so whereas we didn't have a voice before, now our voice is becoming one of the loudest and most powerful voices out there. And so, Shapers, I see as a vehicle through which that voice can be expressed through and out of the World Economic Forum.
Our generation has this opportunity to really be at the forefront of innovation, I think.
The types of individuals that are involved in Shapers come from every industry that you can imagine. There's entrepreneurs that have created startups, and there's writers for TV shows.
There's somebody from the NYPD in the room. There's a doctor in the room. There's an academic in the room. There's a public relations expert in the room. There's a celebrity blogger in the room.
Being surrounded by those who are really motivated really motivates you to actually come up with some of your own ideas or solutions.
It's an amazing group of people, and I think when you mesh all of that together, the skill sets and just the energy of the group is unlike anything that I've really seen before.
You can't have the local impact without the global context. We imagine shapers in New York who care about solving homelessness in their community, being connected to shapers in Shanghai and Johannesburg, all interested in the same issues with the same passions and really using the best insights from that global network to make the biggest possible difference in their own communities.
I think that's what we feel as global shapers in that room is this isn't exactly something extraordinary. We're supposed to be doing this. This is what we're supposed to be doing.
Your Majesty, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Schwab, the Shapers, and also the founding curators. Please come to the stage. So, as we all saw in the film, we were reminded about the fact that more than 50% of the global population is under the age of 27. And in this region, more than 60% of the population is under the age of 27. And we know that more than 50% of the young people live in cities. So that's why it is imperative to make sure that these young voices are heard. And hence, the World Economic Forum has created this worldwide network of city hubs to help young people use their leadership potential to serve their local communities, but in a global context. After Professor Schwab initiated this initiative this spring, we have created 141 hubs all over the world. And we currently have 14 hubs in this region. So, Professor Schwab, how do you see the role of these young voices, global shapers, in the World Economic Forum?
Burger, it's over half of the world community. How can it be left out? And I have to say, first, thank you, Your Majesty, because we have a group which we call Young Global Leaders. Young Global Leaders, people whom we nominate because they have already achieved extraordinary things. And we have a group of 750 young global leaders around the world, but they are usually in the age of 35 to 40. So one day I was sitting with some of the young global leaders and I was thinking, my God, how old are those people? And the idea came up, why not to create, to harness the positive force of the people whom you are seeing here. So we started only 5 months ago, and this is a very exciting moment. It's an exciting moment for the World Economic Forum. It's an exciting moment for myself, for Burger, for everybody involved here, because the engagement which we see now is far beyond our dreams. In the last weeks, I have participated in founding meetings in China, in Tokyo, in the US, and so on. It's a mushrooming. We have 141, as you heard, hubs. Our idea is to have, in the next 3 years, 500 hubs with probably 20,000 global shapers, extraordinary people. And we want to use those people as a very positive force for change. We also feel this is a great community with whom you have to interact, whom you have to mentor, and by whom you should be mentored. Now, some people ask me, Why are you so enthusiastic about it? You are not yourself a global shaper. I just nominated myself to be a triple global shaper, so I fit the criteria. So thanks to the work of a great team which we have at the forum, we have now this capability to engage the young generation very much in what we are doing. And I want to express my appreciation also to the young global leaders who have volunteered to mentor, we call them founding curators, to mentor a chapter in their cities. So you will hear quite a lot about global shapers in the future, and I can tell you it will keep the program and the ideas and what we are doing in the forum young, innovative, and what is particularly striking when you communicate with this generation is the willingness to really live up to the mission of the World Economic Forum, which means being committed to improving the state of the world. Thank you, Burrow.
Thank you. We are all really excited about this, and I think all our participants also have felt already the voices from the young generation. And, you know, it wouldn't be possible to have a meeting in this region with not having representation from 60% of the population. They're under 27. And looking at the topic of this meeting too, this is about your future. Let me then turn to one of our shapers, Saleh Al-Khulafi, Global Shaper Doha Hub in Qatar. What are your aspirations for the region and for the world?
Assalamu alaikum. The advantage that we have as a young generation is not only being young and excited, not only having the internet, but being 4 degrees of separation apart. The things that we can do is not only being, and as we've seen the Arab Spring, not only being in the Tahrir Square, but before that being in the Twitter Square, discussing and plotting the ideas and things that we can do. So I really believe that with the advantage of this network, our generation has much more to do, and we've seen that. We've made the impossible happen. So now we have the chance from taking it from a political level into an economical level, and being with such a great minds from our generation from different fields, I think we can do it.
Thank you. Then we have Samer Iyaspour from Jordan. What are your aspirations? It's a floating mic.
The young global leaders gave me the opportunity to see the future of the world. I've been involved with the World Economic Forum since 2003. When the concept of the young global shapers came up and I was introduced to be the creator for it from Amman, Jordan, it made me realize that it's my duty and commitment to start helping in creating futures for people and to really connect them with whatever opportunities and possibilities that can arise in their future, to be able to connect with their counterparts of shapers, and to really, hand in hand, we can make a difference and change our world. That's basically why I looked into such an initiative and to be part of it, heavily involved.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Kamel Al-Asmar, also from Jordan.
I think youth in the Arab world should be empowered. Their creativity, our creativity basically, should be utilized in the right direction. I think such a network will help us to put a platform where we can help each other and take decisions and make the change that we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Yasmin Galal, our shaper in Cairo.
Well, basically, what I want to say is, during the revolutions in the Middle East, our strength came from numbers, being able to mobilize many people in big masses to drive change and create pressure. However, I think now the reality is changed, and what we need to do to gain our strength is being organized. And being organized, we need to meet each other, and a platform like the Global Change Makers or the Global Shapers of the WEF gives us the opportunity to get together, talk, exchange ideas, and organize ourselves to create pressure and create the change that we want to do. I'm very optimistic about the Global Shapers, and I really hope we do something great out of it.
Thank you, Yasmin. Then we also have funding curator, Sheikh Abdullah bin Ali Al Thani, Qatar.
In 2006, I have to make a difficult decision by stop teaching and moving to the administration, academic administration. And the most important two things I miss about being in a classroom is the energy you get from the youth and being up to date of what's happening around you in the world. I think being a curator going to bring those two things back to me, but also will add a third thing to it, is that you move from having the theory part to having a concrete initiatives that can change the society around you and the world around you. So that's why I accepted to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we go to Tunisia, Amira Yahia.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to share a feeling first. During this meeting, I felt pessimism. Pessimism for the future of the Arab world. And I can understand this pessimism with the situation in the Arab world. But as a Tunisian, and particularly this day, Tunisians are electing our constitutional convention, I can't afford this pessimism. I am a global shaper, and for me, a global shaper have to carry a message of hope. I am 27 years old, a human rights activist, and running for the election in Tunisia. And I think that we Arab, we young, have to fight, and you have to help us. We have to fight for this economic growth and job creation, and we are discussing the economic growth and job creation, but we can't discuss this without addressing the real need of democratization of our countries, the Arab countries, and for the need of freedom. We have to fight for social justice in our Arab countries, for dignity, for liberties, and for freedom. And just to end, I'm long. Many people say that this designation of Arab Spring is wrong. It is an Arab Spring. And all the spring can have rainy days, but I'm sure, and Tunisia will show it, and the other Arab countries will show it, we will have the summer at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Schwab, you founded the World Economic Forum 43 years ago. Do you think the global shapers will also be very important in forming the next 40 years of the forum?
Certainly, they will be a driving force. And I'm just wonder, maybe in 40 years I have to create the global, I don't know, let's call it seniors, in order to accommodate all the shapers still in our community. But I think it's absolutely essential to give the young people a voice, to do it inside the framework of the World Economic Forum, which is impartial, neutral, but being very much engaged in terms of addressing the challenges which we have in the world. So the global shapers will have a dual role. On the one hand, they will become very active and they can show their performance, their civility inside the local framework, but we will make sure as the World Economic Forum that they are engaged on a global level. And as I said before, this is a great moment. It is the first time that we present to a public this concept of the global shapers, and I'm sure the forum, which is very well known for its business partners, for its relations with governments, for its global agenda councils, our intellectual network. I think there was our young global leaders, I should say, there was one missing link, and we closed now the link, and it was not only necessary, I think it will provide a strong impetus in what we are doing.
Thank you so much. So please be standing and get together, because since this is historic in the launch, we want to take the picture. But thank you so much to the Shapers, Young Global Leaders, and Professor Schwab for taking this very timely initiative. Thank you.
So, thank you. Yeah. Burger? Where's Burger? Yeah. Yeah. Big, you have to, please go ahead.